you have actually followed, incredibly, you followed the remit.
I understood the assignment.
So guys, we're not talking a George Bamford 46 watch collection for the 2 watch collection.
No shade at George.
We've
Love
got
you, George.
George is the man, George. Right, guys, good morning to you wherever you are in the world. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Super special guest here, all the way from the United States of America.
That's right.
Wesley Smith, good morning.
How are you, man?
Good
Thank you
to
so
see
much
you.
for having me in your office.
Don't be silly. You've come all the way to London. It would have been... Do you know what? Last time you were in London, I was due to see you and we went to record, and
Right.
I flaked. And so in many ways, this is
Not
just
at all.
the smallest way of saying apologies for that.
Well, that's very kind and unnecessary, but it actually worked out that we didn't, because I was here for a wedding last time, and as a result was very, very, busy with all those events and such and everybody involved.
What are you doing on this visit? What are you here?
This time, I was actually, the main motivation outside of this, of course, but I went to the Bicester Heritage, which they have a Sunday scramble, I think twice a year, and this is either the first, I believe this is the first one, and it's an unbelievable car show, and big car fan, as you know, modern, classic, like exotic, one-off, anything you can think of that has 4 wheels, it was there. It was unbelievable.
Was it as you expected, or was it a wilder day than you thought it would be? Both in terms of what you saw and what you did.
Yeah, it certainly involved cars that I didn't expect. Of course, Porsche was like just coming out of our ears, everywhere, both in the parking lot as well as, in the show itself.
It's an amazing facility there, because I've actually been once before.
Have you? Yeah.
I actually almost wrote off a car doing a lap around a track there, because they've got the air track, the field there.
That's
at the back.
right. Yeah.
With a guy called James JWW.
Oh, James Walker.
James Walker.
Yeah, he used to be based there.
Yeah, he had an office there, and I was filming with him once, and we were going around in his Yaris, his kitted out yellow Yaris.
I remember that
car. I almost spun the thing and spun it and flipped it, but it didn't flip, thank God. But it did spin off of the track, and I'm a shit driver.
Amazing.
So, guys, just to give some clarity here, so Wes runs Standard H apparel, but inspired by your love of motorsport, lifestyle. You're based in California.
Correct.
Just give us a brief then. So how did you get into this? Because I know you spent many years in the clothing and style world before launching your own brand.
Yes. Very, very robust background in retail and management, primarily sales management. And some keystone brands were, James Purse, Gucci. I opened the Allen Edmonds store in San Diego, 7 years ago at this point. And then as a side hustle, I've always wanted to start my own clothing brand, and so I launched with a hat with just my logo on the top, sold a few, made some more, sold some more, made some t-shirts. The whole idea was to start doing my own, what's called cut and sew in the industry, where it's, my fabric, my cut, silhouette, cut, sewed, dyed, finished, everything. And for me, having worked for James Purse for 5 years, Borderline, basically, like, made in LA was very important to me for a couple reasons. One, your minimum order quantity can be lower. I don't have to order 3,000 things from China, for example. Also, the fabrics, everything, the know-how, the expertise in LA, if you're going to make something that's, say, cotton, LA is one of the best places in the United States, if not the best, to do so. And it's just so happens to be 2 hours up the road. So it's convenient from like a quality control standpoint and relationship building. And so that's why I do everything in LA. It's also, it helps with the carbon footprint, not a major marketing, aspect.
Because now you do more than just caps. You do t-shirts, you do sweats, you do other things.
I do this, I do this.
Go on, get it out, whip her out.
Yeah.
And all made in
everything's cut, sewed, dyed, finished in LA.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Super cool.
Yeah.
And the inspirations for the design pieces, I mean, motorsport plays a role.
Right.
The design of the logo is clear.
Sure.
But watches do as well. And then I would say European sort of influence, because you were saying earlier, actually, before we started filming, how many people you interact with, be it guys that you watch from YouTube or otherwise, tend to be European. And there seems to be, I think, a bit of a European sentiment to the design element of your gear.
Well, I think certainly British in the sense that it's classic. It's sort of a timeless approach aesthetically. So I think from that perspective, it's very much so, yes. I also think that people in the UK and Europe especially, they're more into like classic motorsport. Formula One was much more popular here than it was in the United States for eons. And I was one of a few kids who grew up in North Carolina that paid attention to Formula One and not NASCAR, for example. I liked the cars that could actually turn right, as I used to joke when I was 10 years old. And so as a result, yeah, I've just long been into it and really enjoy it. And but some of the other aspects are, or even just like the way the t-shirts are stitched. There's not like a visible stitching on the t-shirt. So I wanted the panels of the shirt to come together like the body panels of a car, because there's no stitching or like no seams, or there's no sort of bolts in cars. Like the seams just come together and you don't know how the car panels are there. So I kind of wanted to mimic that in my t-shirts. So I kind of launched with my t-shirt with regards to when I started the cut and sew. Then it grew into more like the shirt, jacket, and things of that nature.
A lot of people watching this might also know you, or may primarily know you for the podcast, because it's interesting how you developed that. Did you develop that at the start of the business and say, you know what, I wanted to do a podcast as a way to connect with the audience and celebrate people that I liked? I've been fortunate enough to be on the pod,
Yeah, thank
which
you
I'm
very
grateful
much.
for.
Yeah, of course.
But you, in many ways, because we actually had Chris Hall from Mr. Porter, the editor, on recently.
Right.
And Mr. Porter, I think, were much like you in the sense that they recognised how important that content piece was.
Sure.
In the merchandising element as well.
Yeah.
What came first?
Well, certainly the brand came first with regards to the apparel. It was the first business I ever started, so I wanted to interview either entrepreneurs or anybody who was instrumental in growing a company. So you didn't necessarily have to be a founder. However, you know, if you could speak to the business and its growth, this was the first business I ever started, so it was an opportunity for me to learn, but also share with others how they may or may not be starting a business, and maybe share something in the interest of not wanting to gatekeep, basically. And, you know, look, let's be honest. I mean, it's also a fairly good community building exercise. So it was that. But this is also kind of how it lends itself to my brand being involved in the watch industry, because I interviewed, I guess, namely, the first one that really took off was the Adrian Barker episode with Adrian from Bark and Jack. And so that one outperformed many of the other episodes up until that point. So then I started to interview more people like yourself and other people in the watch industry. So now I'm a niche within a niche. It's an automotive-inspired line of apparel for watch collectors. So
in my mind, there's a visual.
There's 100 people that shop from my brand.
There's a visual in my mind of you at car get-togethers.
Yeah.
Sort of appreciating the gear that everyone's rocked up with, and then checking each other's watches. And there's a whole visual in my mind of what the scene looks like.
100%.
Is that right? Do you go to events? Do you organise them at all? Do you ever have get-togethers or?
I haven't organized any really yet, as far as like cars and watches events. That's certainly
You should do that. No?
Well, it's certainly in you know, in the notebook, so to speak. I have a laundry list of things to do. The to-do list is quite long, but you know, eventually in some of the travel stuff, just in general, like scheduling trips with small groups, is something that I would really be interested in as well. I'll save the details for later.
Would anyone like to see that from Standard H? Yeah. Please let us know in the comments below. YouTube's a special place for comments. That's something I've realised recently. Everyone's got something to say, which I love. And what I would say is that the commentary is different to any other platform. People feel that they can talk, and please, guys, keep them coming. But that's interesting, because people in the years gone by have talked to me about maybe organising, well, on a local level, taking people out to watch stores in the UK as a sort of guided tour guide that could provide insight at the same time. You know, hey guys, you know, actually, if you looked at this, maybe look at this, maybe consider that as an option. I thought that was interesting. And then I've done a few trips with friends out to Geneva or to Glasuta, where you sort of thought, wow, like, it's been for a friend who's been buying a watch, maybe, you know. That's also interesting.
Well, so I think it's really just an extension of what already happens. I mean,
you
you and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Like, oh, should I buy this? Should I buy that? Should I get rid of this in order to get this? You know, that sort of thing. And I think those things are just literally just a natural extension of that. So why don't you, rather than talking to one person, you could talk to 5 and go visit a factory, for example. That's an idea.
Give us a flavour, Wes, of your collecting style when it comes to watches. What brands do you like? What references do you like? You've had a lot in the past, and now you've had a process recently of refinement.
Right.
Just give us a brief on your vibes.
Well, I'll start sort of more recent and go back only due to the fact that I've only recently sort of acknowledged the fact that I am such a Richemont fan, apparently. Because all the brands that I love the most happen to be under their umbrella. Yeah. So IWC, Cartier, I mean, you know, the Grail is Lange, you know, all Richemont brands. So my first love is IWC.
Where did that come from?
I had moved to Los Angeles from North Carolina in 2007. Wandering around Rodeo Drive, I stumbled into an IWC boutique, not knowing what it was. Loved a watch. I wore a Swiss Army watch that my grandmother had gifted me for my high school graduation. I mean, watches go way back. Mickey Mouse watches, all the rest of it, you know, per usual for us. But stumbled into IWC, just made a beeline to the back wall for some reason where the Portofino chronograph was. Now, I don't know why, it was the most unlike, elegant, but also complicated looking watch that was sort of the polar opposite of what was on my wrist at that time. And I just loved it. Like, for all I knew, it was a Patek, you know what I mean? Like, it was just beautiful. Sort of the irony behind that statement, it was the least expensive chronograph they made, and still, I think. And I fell in love with the watch. And then it was like, oh my God, I had no idea watches were this expensive.
And they might have had the campaign images from that shoot in Portofino with Christoph Waltz and Emily Blunt and some other characters.
Yeah.
But just for me, that watch, those images came together in a special moment. But I hear you on the point about that watch could have been a Patek, could have been anything from the very top of the watch world.
Sure.
Because to you, and for me, it was exactly the same.
Yeah.
I remember loving the first Portofino, the 5251, the original big 46mm one. I thought that was the most elegant thing in the world.
Right. But massive.
Massive.
Like in hindsight only.
Yeah. I'm kind of wanting back. I'd like to get that now, but it's funny. The Portofino for me, pretty much, along with the Portuguese, the chronograph was
classic.
Yeah, the first two that really got me into it. And as you say, it was beautiful and it was sexy, and that's all that mattered. It didn't matter about any other brand or where it sat in the market.
Yeah, and then of course that was the foray into, I joke, watches with a comma in the price tag. You know, so with that, then I actually wrote a fashion and lifestyle blog just because I wanted to. It's still up. It's called Screaming Mouth.
Screaming Mouth.
So
get on there, guys. For God's sake, get on there. I haven't seen that. I'll have to check that out.
And so it was like cars, watches, lifestyle, architecture, et cetera, et cetera. But this was also right at the time that Hodinkee was popping off, like, you know, 2008, 2009. And so I think at times just repost what Ben was writing, just because, or you know, even if it were just like a photo or something. And so I started to dive deeper into his site, and then just, you know, it's a deep, deep dive. So it was just
Did this culminate in an IWC purchase, or?
So it was only disrupted because I was at work having a conversation about watches, and some gentleman kind of over my shoulder said, "Excuse me, so I understand you're a watch guy." I was like, I mean, to an extent, I can only afford so much. And he said, well, what's on your hit list? And I named a few, the Portofino chronograph. And at the time, the Tudor Black Bay had just been released with the black bezel with the ETA movement, the smiley face. And so we're talking 2015. And he said, well, you know, I just so happened to own a Rolex dealership. And I was like, oh, okay. So he's like, well, I could probably help you with the Tudor. So the Tudor was actually lesser expensive than the Portofino, of course. And then this gentleman obviously didn't carry IWC. So the Portofino chronograph was only disrupted because of this new relationship that I had started. And so actually the first like kind of big boy watch was actually a Tudor. I'd later sold it and regretted it, only to
black dial, black bezel, smiley face.
Right, correct. Yep. And it very limited production. A lot of people would say that was a really dumb move. But I found, again, as you explore, you know, with the journey, so to speak, I found that just the crown at 41 millimeters with the bigger crown tube just kind of dug into the back of my wrist too much. So as a result, I just kind of sought something a little smaller. And then last year when the Black Bay 54 came out, I was just like, oh my gosh. And I think I'm going to engrave the back one, the Black Bay 54. I think I want to engrave it, never sell your first. Because I do regret it.
Yeah, I had one as well, strangely. I had a black one as well. And now I've got a Pelagos, a blue FXD, which I'm quite enjoying.
Oh, so that was your, okay.
Yeah,
I saw it the other day. Right.
Yeah, just a bit of fun. I had an itch which needed scratching. Weirdly, I had the coral strap for this thing before I got the watch.
And it looks amazing.
The coral was sitting there. I was like, shit, I now need the watch. So anyway, that was another story for another time. But what are we talking today? Because you have actually followed... Incredibly, you followed the remit.
I understood the assignment.
So guys, we're not talking a George Bamford 46 watch collection. for the 2-watch collection.
No shade at George.
We've
Love
got
you, George.
George is the man. George. People have been loving it. People have been loving that chat. So thank you for the support. But what do we got here?
Okay, so crack it open.
Crack it. Oh, that's a lovely, beautiful.
So this is a Molquin case, as we know. Michael Luther, thank you. Big shout out to Michael. Big fan of his. So, of course, we're talking Richemont.
Yes.
So, I went 1-2 with a sports watch and then obviously a more dressy piece. Let's say.
Amazing.
So
which came first?
The tribute came first. So this is the tribute to 3705, which you're very familiar with because you have the original.
Yes.
So part of the reason I brought this too was because I knew you had the original. The interesting thing is the original has the Valjoux 7750, which is in my Portofino chronograph. So it's kind of interesting. I have the movement that you have, but I have the updated watch. So that's kind of special in that sense. But yeah, so this is the one. I really love this. So it comes on a black calfskin, which I don't love. But this is an OEM strap from
it's IWC.
An IWC strap, yeah. But then, you know, being a strap connoisseur, being a Molquin friend and family member, I like to say, and being obsessed with taupe. As
which we share. We do share that passion.
I do wear this watch sometimes.
Everything
on
looks
a taupe
better
strap.
on taupe for me.
It's unbelievable. It's the most versatile color ever.
I love this. So we're talking size-wise. So is it 41? So the original 3705, 39 millimeters. Now, Wes, I've got to be honest with you. I hate to say this. I no longer have the watch.
Oh no way! You got rid of it.
So I did do a quick video a while back just to explain the methodology for it.
Okay,
I've got a Top Gun 44, which I happen to love.
Okay.
But to me, there was something about what was the thought here? I love the size. I love the history.
Right.
It's very expensive. It's a very expensive watch for wearing a watch. To me, it was quite difficult to square away the price versus the way it fit into my life. I was wearing it. I was wearing it a lot.
Sure.
The issue I had also was that the crystal, was very curved and unreflective. Well, it was very reflective, but it had no anti-reflective element to it. So it was tough to read. So it was actually quite hard to read and actually a little bit frustrating. Whereas what I love immediately about this is just how incredibly clear and legible that is.
That watch is IWC to me.
I agree. And now, so 41, but this is Ceratanium.
That's Ceratanium. Before they really launched all the Ceratanium watches.
There was a Hodinkee one. We've just thinking about other guests we've had on. We've had Jake from A Man in Time who bought his Hodinkee 39 on. And it's amazing because you can feel the difference to ceramic. It's got a bit of a more granular feel to it, to the touch, and it's got a greyness to it.
Correct.
It's not deep black. It's not
certain lights. It'll actually even skew blue, almost like an oil slick. You know, it's got that iridescence almost to it. Which, speaking of the Hodinkee piece, Stephen Pulverin, if you're watching, if you ever sell that watch, we have an agreement that I'm buying it.
He bloody loves that watch. He loves that watch.
I absolutely love that.
Do you know what's really interesting about this for me as well is the dial itself, because unlike a lot of the Pilots ones that have bold sort of applied, often sort of squared-ish markers.
Right.
This is so clean, and the numerals are so clean, and there's just something pure about the design. I really love it, and they made 1,000 of them in total.
Correct. Yep.
And I saw one on a flight recently. Actually, I was flying to Zurich, and you know the London to Geneva flight and back is always a great watch spotting flight.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And this was on the Zurich one, which is the one.
It's funny. I've never seen one in the wild.
Never, really.
I've seen them in stores. You know, like secondhand stores and such. So if you're interested, I think Analog Shift has one.
It's a lovely, lovely size. I just think you're right. It's IWC in the modern age, but very wearable, great size. And if you're going to have one black watch, which I think every collection should have one black watch.
So here's what's funny is it was, I believe, December of 2021, perhaps. And I went into my local AD, a friend of mine, Giorgio, works there. And I said, listen, man, I'm really hunting just an all-black watch. And I could only assume IWC would sell something like that, right? And for whatever reason, I somehow missed the press release on this or something. I don't remember. It's all kind of blurry. But I walked in there and we're thumbing through the catalog, and then all the way at the back, it was one of like a 3-ring binder type of thing because it was an in-store catalog. It wasn't like one to take home. And he's like, well, what is this thing? Because I think he had just come back. He had like gone and left the business. So I think he missed the press release as well. And so we find it, and I was like, oh my God, what is this thing? And so immediately it says, like, call for request or something like that. And I looked online, and it said that. And so I called the customer service number, who's, I guess they're in Texas or something. And they said, well, and I don't know if this is correct or if they're just creating urgency, but they said this is the last one that's been allocated for North America. Because apparently there were 4 regions, I'm told, so don't quote me, but apparently that was the last one sold new from IWC in North America. So I like got in by the skin of my teeth.
Really?
You know, yeah.
And did you order it there and then, or did you come back to try it on?
I said I need to call you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so I called the very next morning early.
It's fantastic. The other thing, couple of things actually that come to mind is the hour. You've got the Flieger sort of cut off hour market, squared out, which I love.
Yep.
The pushers for one thing I learned when I spent some time at IBC recently was the pushers in previous models and the one I've got were aluminium, or sorry, titanium.
Right.
Titanium. Whereas these
So
are actually
silver
ceratanium.
looking. Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
these are ceratanium. And these are the big things. And the buckle ceratanium.
Correct.
And the case back ceratanium.
Exactly. So these are all just, I'm very aesthetically driven.
Yeah.
Like I have some watches that are lesser expensive. I have some that are a little bit more expensive. And a lot of it is just literally driven by the details you just mentioned. Like they still produce a ceratanium watch, I believe, with kind of a silvery looking pusher. And it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not a fan.
I love it. Absolutely love it. The
This
proportions
watch is
are
perfect.
stunning. Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so that's got you covered for all sporting events. And I've got to say, I just a quick take on the duo together is they do seem to balance nicely. I mean, over the years that we've done this, there's been some wild shit that's been brought to the table.
Yeah.
But nothing has felt maybe as clearly distinct as a great sports watch and a great dress watch.
Right.
But anyway, tell me what you've got next. You've got a Cartier.
From day to night, so to speak.
Yeah.
So Cartier...
In a precious metal, no less.
Icon.
In a precious metal.
Yeah, this is the Louis, so it is rose gold, and it is manually wound. It is a mechanical watch, you know, as opposed to a quartz movement. And then the buckle is just so elegant as well. This, again, going back to the straps and being driven by aesthetics, this comes on a brown, they call it alligator. I'm convinced it's stamped calfskin. It's garbage. Whatever it is, it's terrible. But this is a Cartier strap, and it comes on more of like kind of a caramelly color, which I just think looks far more timeless. It looks more vintage, frankly. And then it also dresses up and dresses down really lovely. You know, white t-shirt, jeans, loafers. It's a beautiful piece. It's a great size. It's considered large by definition. And of course the cabochon. I mean, it's perfect.
Quintessential. Cartier.
You know, the guilloche dial.
I was going to say, the
Unreal.
depth that it gives.
I have some photos of it. And did you ever meet George Kramer?
No, I didn't.
Rest in peace.
Yeah,
The
but I
man-
spoke to him a lot. Lovely
this was
man.
during COVID. He and I started chatting on DM on Instagram, and I was telling him I was hunting this, and he walked me down sort of the aisle, so to speak, to this one. And he said, this is going to be the only one you'll ever need. And I said, fair enough. So I bought his book, and thankfully and luckily, before he passed, I had sent him a photo of my watch on top of his book.
Oh, brilliant.
And it was just really, really nice. And I had that strap on it too, and he was very complimentary, which, you know, I mean, George Kramer, what more can you say about he and Cartier?
A wonderful gent who, as I say, I didn't get to meet, but actually always had time for questions.
100%.
For everybody, which was a real credit.
Yeah.
I agree with you in the strap. To me, that's the visual that I've got for the watch in my mind, coming on that strap.
Unbelievable.
And what do you attribute the rise of Cartier to in the last few years, Wes? Because it seems that in the States, I don't know if it feels like it's had a bit of a stronghold in Europe for a long time. I think there's been a hardcore group of French and Italians and Brits that have held it in high esteem.
Sure.
But in the US, it seems like it's going gangbusters at the
Well,
moment.
I think it's pretty multifaceted, really. I think Waco has gone, you know, full hog into Cartier with regards to like his coverage, his enthusiasm. He's talked about his piece uniques that he's had. And then on top of that, you know, I think he was the first person I ever heard say they had such a brilliant collection in CPCP, and now the whole collection is like CPCP. Which, I mean, how more complimentary could you be towards a brand when you go the best of the best is now everything. And again, Cartier, it's timeless. It is the perfect foray into a dressier piece than, say, you know, a chronograph, for example. And they have the history and, you know, all that to prove
and
it.
probably something that works for you is they're very much aesthetically driven themselves.
100%.
Not that every brand isn't, but
Yeah.
they particularly strike me as a brand that really care about shapes,
Yeah.
detailed design, less so. Although they did, you might remember, say, 8 years ago, they had a foray into high complex watchmaking, but that's not really them.
Right.
They're about elegance,
Yeah.
design, shape, gem setting and stone setting. And I saw some watches at Watches and Wonders this year from them, and it was just like, actually probably garnered more questions than anything else from anyone else, because themes around animals and
Right,
you know, these
right.
3D, almost 3D case shapes with
Yeah.
diamond sets, and it just bonkers. And I think they had like 50 plus new watches, and I sort of thought I would not want to be competing against them in that segment of the market right now, because it's just like it's like when you know UFC on top of a guy and you've got him on full mount and you're just pounding away at them. It's like there's nothing else you can do. You know,
like,
they are coming out so hot right now.
Yeah, and well, it's almost like the Steve Jobs quote. It's like people don't know what they want until you show them.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, to take it a step further, they have this like way of predicting what people want. Apparently, like the Normal last year on bracelet, unbelievable. I mean, it's just it's incredible.
I've got a friend actually in London who got a pink gold one, and
The
he's
Normal.
he's just put it on an
So
orange
good.
strap, and he's having a great time with it.
I have a friend with the yellow, and he put it on a burgundy suede strap. Unreal, transforms the piece. Well, I mean, that's the strap conversation yet again, you know.
Well, we should touch on straps because you like to mess around as much as I do. Molquin typically for the most part.
99.9% of the time.
Yeah, so we've not been paid to say that.
No, I have not been paid. The
But
mailbox is open and ready, however. I'm kidding. But it is one of those things where, like I said, I mean, it transforms the piece. Let's say you only have 2 or 3 watches. If you have 6 or 7 straps, you suddenly have 18 watches, or you know, whatever. You know, I mean, it's really unique in that way.
I'm still waiting for a beautiful little strap box that's sort of a travel strap box.
Interesting.
That I've been messaged from people saying there are 1 or 2 out there, but something really sort of clean, simple, maybe for 5 straps, because I think that gives you full coverage for no matter how many watches you've got.
So you want the Louis Vuitton trunk, but shrunken.
Miniature and very slick and very simple. Because
Okay.
the one thing I have got from Molquin, which I haven't got in front of me now, unfortunately, is a little pouch, a little zipped up Alcantara pouch.
Yeah, I mean, I have this, which I actually got at
Is that a dinky one?
It's from their 10th anniversary party that was in New York in 2018. I believe.
That's lovely. No, that's lovely.
And it's kind of fun.
It's really supple.
Yeah.
And it comes down to that for me personally. And what's the next step for you? Because
well, there's IWC, of course. There's the Cartier, of course, and then a watch brand that doesn't show its face very much on your channel is Rolex. I did get married in a Rolex. Yeah. My grandfather also gave me his Rolex on my wedding day. So those 2 are in the collection and don't go anywhere. I think I've shared previously that if my wife and I take a vacation to somewhere neither one of us have ever been, I bring my wedding watch only.
I think you're going to say you're going to buy a watch when you go there.
No,
to mark the trip. No?
Yeah, no.
With the wife.
I don't. Yeah, that's not really allowed. So from that perspective, this 36 millimeter OP no date on bracelet, black dial.
Yes.
Just, I mean, it goes with everything.
Does she wear it every so often, or?
She has 0 interest in watches, which is unbelievable. I don't understand it.
Sorry, Britt, you chuckling in the background there. But she has an interest in other aesthetic elements of your life. You know, I'm saying she likes. Does she or does she not? Because you're very driven by aesthetic. You're visual. I'd like to think the same as me. But does
I must say I married the right one because she kind of just like lets me do my thing.
Yeah, doesn't get too involved.
But also gets to enjoy it. Like I redesigned the inside of our house and I quite literally drew my kitchen on a piece of paper and had it rebuilt last year.
And she wasn't too involved in that. Just let you crack on and
exactly.
Just let you crack on. But
that's the kind of what's interesting is that I'm far more opinionated on aesthetics than she is, I would say. So she kind of lets me do that. But at the same time, we have the exact same style and taste, if that makes sense. So even though I'm kind of left to my own devices, she appreciates it and also agrees 99% of the time.
So when you're on holiday and you're walking down these streets
Right.
in Verona or Sicily or wherever it might be, and there's a watch shop popping up, she expects you to start stumbling over. She knows you're going to head over.
I can duck in, otherwise I will sort of finagle away to say, well, why don't you check that out over there? She missed seeing that, but I saw it.
Yeah.
So I'll say, why don't you check out those bags? I'll be right back.
You've got the strategy.
I'm going to go take some photos.
We should actually touch on, we maybe finish on your love of photography as well, and the brand that you shoot with, and you, because that's part of the DNA here as well, I think.
Sure. Yeah, I had long been a fan of Leica. I'd never owned a Leica before. As a wedding gift from my parents, they paid for half of my Q2. So I paid for half of it. My parents paid for the other half as my wedding gift. It is a fixed 28 millimeter, so it's super wide. It's great for like street photography, architecture, things like that. But you can crop in the camera. Not paid to say this. Leica, feel free. Now there's since been a Q3 released, but just for what it's worth, I don't need to upgrade.
No.
But it's an amazing brand, an amazing camera. The resolution's insane. The colors are insane. I can't say anything more.
I had one years ago actually and absolutely loved it. And just for work, I had to change it to the SL because I found shooting watches, it was a little bit easier to use with this variable lens.
Oh, you have a Leica SL?
I've got a Leica SL,
oh, nice.
yeah, an SL1.
Yeah, those are beautiful.
Big SL, but then a big sort of, what is it, 24-90 mil lens. But recently I've been really sniffing around in a Q again, but a monochrome Q.
Okay, so I kind of want the M11 monochrome, which is complete slowdown, you know, with the manual focus and all that.
There's just something elegant, the romance in a black and white shot for me.
Totally.
I feel like...
But you see texture better.
Yeah.
It's better with shadow. 100%, yeah.
The only thing I'm thinking of is it would be quite nice to document my daughter's journey through a quick fire sort of thing on the go.
Right.
But it's actually my birthday this week, and my folks said to me, "What would you like for your birthday?" And I said, "Oh, guys, I'm thinking about a Q. Like I'm thinking about a camera. I didn't say Q. Thinking about a camera. Would you be interested in contributing a little bit to that?" And my sister was like, "Yeah, I'm happy with that." They don't know how much it is yet. They do not know the price. They do not know the price. So I haven't asked for anything in specific. There's no volume of cash that they are told that they are going to require to put forward. But whatever it may be, I'm going to use that to build the pot for a monochrome at some point.
Yeah. Brilliant. No, it's an amazing camera. As you say, like the brand is insane. They just completely churn out the best, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh God, another Leica guy," but use it and you'll find out.
Something special.
Yeah.
I realised I cut you off before you said what your great. What's the next watch? What's the thing you're hunting, or is there something, or have you got to a point where you actually realised, you know what, I'm okay?
I'm just on your coattails constantly because I'm just following the Lange fervor, if you will. So it's one of those things where a Lange Sona is just, I mean, it's it. You know, I mean, between that and Patek, like those are the two that kind of oscillate back and forth, I think, with regards. But there's just something about the fonts, for example, on Lange's. The Lange 1 especially with, you know, asymmetrical dial. But there's like a sportiness to it and an elegance. And then, of course, just the details, like how, you know, the lugs are sort of chamfered and how they meet the case at that angle, which is insane. But then it's also, you know, it's kind of matte gloss on the case on the side, and I mean I could just keep going on and on and on.
So you're saying it's a Lange 1.
Yeah, I mean that's probably
no apologies there. No apologies there, because I can tell you right now we've talked about the watch a lot, and over the years, and I've had a few friends come on and have brought them, and it's been a love affair for me. No two ways about it.
Right.
It's been, and I appreciate they've been getting some stick amongst the watch community at the moment, and rightfully or wrongfully, I don't know, because I actually haven't gone through the servicing problems that some people say they've had.
Oh, really?
But to me, yeah, well, I hear a little bit of this going on in the background. To me, the watches are, particularly in the hand, are unparalleled.
Right.
Admittedly, I've not held stuff from Patek necessarily that often, but to me, in the hand, they beat the socks off everybody else. Just the quality, the build quality is just incredible.
I don't disagree. I mean, but again, it's about the details as well.
I agree.
Like Paddock has, you know, a long-running history, clearly, and they get to do whatever they want, you know, being privately owned and such. And usually they're making the right decision, right? Like there's very few things that I look at from Paddock and I'm like, ugh, you know. But I same sentence for Longa as well.
There really isn't anything, you know, there isn't anything. There's nothing in the cat. I'm actually not a huge fan of the Odysseus. That's probably the one watch actually I'm not a huge fan.
Yeah,
a lot of people who've got them that I know have said that they're the most wonderful thing to wear and to own. I'm a purist in the respect that I like the big date being on the Lange 1. I'm not a huge fan of the big date on other models.
I completely agree with you.
Is my personal sentiment.
That's the only reason why I would never consider the Datograph like a grail piece for me. I would go 1815 chronograph all day.
I agree.
And that's sort of my grail chronograph. But at this point, I mean, let's face it, Longa 1's a little cheaper. Quite a bit cheaper. So
and
less expensive.
I've had the argument with a friend actually about this over years now. Is because he had a Lange 1, he was thinking the chrono 1815 chrono was the one.
Right.
The problem is they're so different. They're two different animals. You can't sell because, like you and I, he had to sell this to get this. It wasn't like you could have both. So he had to either get rid of the Lange 1 or just keep it and say, hey.
Right.
And I think the 1815 chrono is just one that it's different to a Lange 1 and needs to be respected in that way.
Yes.
And I fear it's one that you just have to stockpile for time to come.
And that's the only way I would play those cards. There's no way if I have a Longa 1 that I'm getting. It's so versatile day to night. You know, it has the date. It goes with everything. And if I didn't say this before, I may be repeating myself. Sorry, but there's this sportiness to that watch as well. I'm obsessed with alpha hands. I like the white gold silver dial variant because they're actually loomed hands, which makes it a little bit even less dressy, I think.
Well, that's that sporty element.
100%.
And I like it, to me, a dress watch with some loom. I mean, I don't know what sort of watch this is, but the loom on this thing makes it very, very sporty to me. And I get that sentiment from Lange 1 with loomed hands as well. Yeah, very, very interesting.
I mean, if you think about it, Longa 1, 1815 chronograph. I mean, I love these two, but you know,
could they be going into a double packet? I mean, the question is, well, this is a serious worry.
All right.
This is a serious 21st. What's it? What do they say? 21st century worry. No. It's a privileged question to be concerned about, and it's not one that I'm in the position to be asking myself right now. But what dial variant and which generation 1815 would you go for? Because I love the black dial. I think it's the second or third generation.
Okay.
But then that first generation with the smaller subdials, sort of contrasting subdials, is very nice. Or it's just the boutique edition, the sort of silver with the blue accent numerals.
Right.
Which one is it? Because I've never been able to nail down which 1815 like I have with the Lange 1, quite honestly.
Really good question. And I think the first series, right, had Longa written above, right?
Yeah. So,
and then the second one became almost more negative space involved. Like it wasn't as congested.
Yeah. So the first group of chrono, as I understand it, that came through were not very popular because it was almost very Spartan. There was actually not very much on there at all.
Okay.
Then they moved to something that had a bit more going on, and it's those smaller subdials in that first iteration.
Right.
Then it sort of had another variation where, I think it was the second or the third, where the indentation, that sort of inner circle, was drawn around the dial.
Right.
And then it came in silver. Silver black, which is lovely. And then the boutique edition, which seemingly there seems to pop up quite often on the secondary market. So
the boutique was the silver with the blued print.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a black dial guy.
Yeah,
so I think I would go black, and especially with the Longa 1, obviously, hopefully coming in the silver dial.
So you'd have a nice balance.
It's a really nice dichotomy between the two. It's really sporty, and then something more just kind of brighter. I gotta say, it's probably the current catalog one because I tried it on 6 months ago when I was here. There was a boutique that had one in stock and that was available.
And you've not stopped thinking about it.
Available. Couldn't do it. Available. So, but they did allow me to try it on, which was fantastic. And sure enough, my wife was like, "What do you need to do to get that?" And I was just like,
"Wow,
are you kidding me?" And I was like, "I don't deserve this watch right now. Like, I got to work harder." But I kind of think the current production is that it's it for me. I hope they don't change it. And if they do, who knows? Maybe it'll be for the better in some way, shape, or form.
Have you met Willem Schmidt, the CEO from Langham?
I haven't. He's one of the white whales for the podcast for sure. He and Christian Granger.
Yeah.
Or Chris Granger. But
Willem's a lovely, lovely man. I just happen to think you would get on very well with him, having met him a few times over the years at different events. His car...
I watch every interview that he's in.
Yeah. Of course, his car knowledge and... well, Christ, if there's an event that you should get to... with that man there, yes. It's a treat. It's a treat. Walking around, you would... Yeah. Anyway, that's one for next year.
That's like a bucket list.
I went last year. It was a bucket list for me. I went last year for the first time. But it was completely rained out. It was completely drenched.
I remember the photos, actually.
But they launched a 1 of 1, 1815 chrono, funnily enough, for the winner, in a copper with black numerals, copper dial, not salmon.
I remember that.
Shit.
Because they had that tent, right?
Yeah,
it was in the tent. I remember seeing photos inside of like a tent.
That's a special event. That's a special event with the camera and the Langham one on the wrist. One day, that'll be a special.
It almost also feels like a foregone conclusion. It's like, yeah, I'm ticking all the boxes of every stereotype.
Yeah, but you're gonna love it.
Oh well, it's fantastic stuff. It's great content for sure.
Wes, thank you so much, boy.
Thank you so much
Lovely
for having
to chat.
me.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Guys, always a joy having you with us. Thank you so much. Please, God, leave your comments underneath. Hit the subscribe button. Pull down the bell if you want to be notified of new episodes coming out. I don't even know if that's right. Good to have you with us. Till next time, go well.